Hey everybody, what's happening? Dustin checking in. Hike Brothers Outdoors. Hope everybody's doing well out there. Up here in Minnesota right now, the temperatures are dropping and the ice is building. Wanted to talk about a subject today that I think's on a lot of people's minds. The last couple years, it's been real tough to find bait halfway through the ice season. Shiners run out first, sucker minnows next. It gets tough. So I kind of talked about this in an earlier video. I built some minnow tanks out in my shop. Thought I would use this to kind of explain some things about the way the process works as far as keeping fish. Anybody can go buy bait. Anybody can throw bait in a bucket and keep it alive for a week in their garage. But if you want to sustain a decent sized amount of bait for a long duration, there's some things you need to know and some things you need to do to make sure that you give yourself the best chance at being successful at that. So I'm going to use this tank set up here. I just got done building for a guy as a way to kind of point out some of the things that you need to do to keep bait fish alive, why you need to do these things, what benefit it has for the fish. Anybody can keep bait alive for a week in a bait bucket, but to sustain bait for months at a time requires some care and requires some time. Worth it when no one has shiners midway through the ice season. Not the bait shop's fault. A lot of regulations make that stuff pretty tough. But anyway, just giving you a quick walk around tour of this setup. You can see there's a lot going on back here. I'll explain the why behind that here shortly. This thing's all wrapped in textured aluminum with white PVC trim. Try to keep it stuff that isn't going to rust, isn't going to rot, so it's completely sealed up, caulked all around any of the seams on the top. Got a nice white PVC countertop here. Anyway, I'll run you through what's happening here and why. For starters, there's a few important factors in keeping bait fish alive. 1, clean water. 2, oxygenated water. And 3, temperature. Those are probably the 3 most important factors. So I'll explain to you how this tank works for each of those things and things that you can do at home to ensure you keep your bait alive. So for starters, I guess, a bait tank, like an aquarium, has to go through a cycling process. And what that means is you get ammonia in the water from fish waste and from fish breathing. They produce ammonia. Well, that ammonia eventually turns into nitrites. Nitrites eventually turn into nitrates. Starting with ammonia, it's the most toxic for fish, and then right behind that would be nitrites, and then lastly, nitrates. You have to get a beneficial bacteria started in your tank. A good way to do that is to throw a few fish in there, a light load in the beginning to get that cycling process started. You'll need to get some test strips, or otherwise there's solution you can buy to test your water and follow it through that cycling process, watching it turn from ammonia to nitrites and nitrites to nitrates. And after a certain point, you should be good. You never still want to just overload it with fish because those levels will spike. The more fish you have in here, the more you need to be concerned about doing water changes and things like that. So here's how the tank works and what it's doing. I'll start where it all starts, which is right here. This is a drain line coming from the bottom of the first tank. You can see it's also connected to the second tank with a valve separating the two so they're being individually filtered. This line goes into this filter, and then that water comes back up clean through here. Now that water's got a bunch of different outlets in that pipe, so it's really agitating the surface well. You can see there's no flat spots in the water. That's what you want for that process to happen and to get that oxygen into the water. Another thing you'll notice here is I've got an overflow piped. You can see the overflow here, and then there's one in the other tank. Those are piped together and they go into a drain. You can see I drilled a vent hole here to keep that from getting airlocked. There's a drain valve down there, and why that's beneficial is you need to change your water. You need to keep that water clean, whether it's a bucket or a great big system like this. Keeping that water clean is super important. It gets that ammonia out of there. So I would say, like, if you're running an average load, let's say I had 4 or 5 dozen baits in these tanks. Every 2 weeks or so, you're going to want to do a 15-20% water change. The more bait you put in it, the more water you need to change to keep those ammonia levels from getting too high. So back to the overflow. This allows you to take well water and stick it into the tank and let it overflow and then drain out through that valve I showed you there. Not only are you getting that ammonia out of the water, but you're also keeping your temperature down, and that's not so important during the winter because I keep my shop about 55 degrees or so if I'm going to be in it, otherwise 45 or even 50. You don't want that temperature to get too low because then that bacteria that you need won't grow. Another important thing you need to keep in mind, if you don't have well water, you need to treat your tap water or use distilled water. The chlorine in city water will kill the fish. Well guys, as you can see, I've got complete chaos going on in my shop right now. Got about 1,000 projects going on. So I'm gonna get back to it. Thank you guys for watching. Let me know if you have any questions or if I left anything out in the comments. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. Check us out on Instagram and Facebook, Hike Brothers Outdoors. As you can see, I got a fish house in the works back here, so stay tuned for some video on that. And happy hunting, guys. Tight lines out there. Peace.